So I'm talking about Tower of Hanoi. Maybe you have come across this problem before. So it is also called Tower of Brahma. It's not Brahma as we uh, often mispronounce. It's basically Brahma. Brahma. So I will tell you the story later on, but let's try to understand what the problem is. So the problem as depicted by this wooden artifact is like this. As you can see that there are three pins. You can call these pins or poles, and in so let this pole be named as A. This is B, and this is C. So there can be multiple variations of this problem, but in this case, the problem is from A to B, you have to transfer all the pins. Sorry, all the discs. As you can see, the discs there is a hole so that you can put it inside this and basically put it through this. Right. So I'm sure you have played this game sometime. If not, it is I mean, very intuitive. So the game is like this. You can move one disk at a time from this peg or this pin. Okay, let's call it pole. So what is it called? Called rod. Okay. So from this rod to any other rod, if you want, you can bring it from any other rod to this rod also. That is also possible. Each move consists of taking the upper disk from one of the stacks and placing it on the top of another stack or on an empty rod. So you can put the disk which is on the top of a stack. So I mean this is a stack. So as I mentioned before that stack is something where you can do insertion or deletion from the top only, right? So this is a real life example of a stack. So you can basically remove from the top and of course add on the top. Naturally, before I mean removing all this, you cannot touch this one right at the bottom. So you can take a disk from the top and put it on some empty rod or some other stack. I mean, in the process of doing it, you may find that some of the disks, I'm sorry, some of the rods already contain some disks. In this, basically arranged in this way, which way no larger disk may be placed on the top of a smaller disk. So, so there will be a larger disk on which you can put a smaller disk, but you cannot put a larger disk on a smaller disk, right? Simple enough, right? So this is the problem of Tower of Hanoi. So Hanoi is, I think, is the name of a place in Vietnam, but I don't think the problem has anything to do with Vietnam. Otherwise, the Americans who I mean, could have objected. Anyway, so this is a problem with n equals to 1. So here n is the number of disks to be moved. So the problem is moving all the disks from A to B. You may or may not use C, right? So for n equal to 1, the problem is very simple, right? For n equal to 1, you can simply put take out disk from this rod and put it on this rod, and the problem is solved. So the problem is trivial for n equal to 1. For n equal to 2, it gets a more slightly more complicated. So in this case, I did not mention that you have to do it in the in the smallest number of steps, right? So the problem is not only to move all the disks in this order, of course. So the stack arrangement should not be altered, and of course you cannot put all these conditions, you cannot put a larger disk on a smaller disk, all these things. But you have to do it in the smallest number of steps, in the least number of steps. So this is the only step you need to do for n equal to 1. For n equal to 2, if you try this out, you will find that this is the simplest way of doing it. I mean, you will be able to do it in the smallest number of steps if you use these configurations. So you move from A, this red disk, to C. Then you move this green disk to B. So as you can see that the green disk is wider or bigger than red. So you put green here and then you put red here. So how many steps? 3 steps. 1, 2, 3. 3 steps. Okay. Now let's consider the problem for n equal to 3. First, green comes here, then blue goes here, then green goes here. So why are you doing it in this way? You think about this more carefully. It is not random. There is some thought behind this. So what exactly are you doing? You see that this is a solution of this problem. If you forget about this red, this is a solution of this problem. Problem of what? Problem of moving these two disks from A to C. So in n equal to 2, what did we do? We moved from A to B, right? Instead of that, and of course we use C. So here, up to this point of time, you see that we are solving the same problem. So instead of moving from A to B, we are moving from A to C using B for n equals to 2. So this is a problem which you have solved before. For n equal to 2, how many steps were there? 1, 2, 3. So that is 2 to the power of n. So n was for n equal to 2. 2 square minus 1, that is 3. So since we have done this sub problem before, we know that we cannot do it in basically less number of steps, because the minimum number of steps you need to take for moving the top 2 to C using B is 3, right? So you are basically solving a sub problem for n equal to 2, but you are moving it to C instead of to B. Then you are doing the problem, you are solving the problem for n equals to 1. In n equals to 1, what did we do? We moved this red to B, right? Where there were, no other disks to be shifted. So that's exactly what we are doing. So forget about this part. Just think that there are only these 2 disks. So for n equal to 1, what did we do? We moved this one to this one. We are doing exactly that. So we are basically solving the same problem for n equal to 1, which we did before. Next, what we need to do, you see that you need to shift this portion, these in this order. So this green sits over blue from C to B. So again, you are solving the sub problem of moving 2 disks from C to B instead, right? So that will take 3 steps again. So from C, I move it to A, then I move this to this, and then I move this to this. So it is not about solving the problem. It's about basically working this out so that it can be modularized. So what are the 3 modules here? So first, you are solving the whole problem by breaking down it into 3 basically sub problems. What are the sub problems? Sub problems are the same problem for lesser size of the input. So here we are basically solving the sub problem of moving 2 disks from A to C, then moving 1 disk from A to B, and moving these 2 disks from C to B. For n equal to 3, the whole problem is very simple, right? And how do you know that this is the optimum solution? This is the best solution, or this is the least number of steps? It's very easy, because we know that the total number of steps the minimum number of steps that you need to solve the subproblem for these two disks, the top two disks, is 3, right? Because for basically n equal to 2, the number of steps is 3. So here, for moving these two to this peg or this rod, it's 3 steps. Then for n equal to 1, it is 1, and then for n equal to 2 to this, n equal to 2 again, for moving this to this, it's again 3. So it's 3 plus 1 plus 3, that is 7. You see that 7 is 2 to the power of 3 minus 1. So this is a classic example of how we can solve the problem by induction. This is also recursion, because you are to solve a bigger version of the problem. By bigger, I mean when the input size increases, by breaking the problem into smaller subproblems, smaller in terms of the input size. So this is precisely what you are doing. So if I can give you a formal solution of this, so let's call this problem towers, n from to via. So the problem is this. So total number of disks is n, and the problem is moving this n disks from A to B via C. That is the formal representation of the problem. And what exactly are you doing? This is a base condition n equals to 1. So which you solve for towers 1, A, B. So moving from A to B, you are moving the single disk. So you are not using C in this case. You may not use C. That is optional. Then and for the inductive condition, or basically the decomposition, for the decomposition of the whole problem for n equal to for n, you are invoking towers n minus 1, A to C using B. So the top n minus 1. So I mean, there are many things which are implicit, which I have not mentioned explicitly, but I'm sure you are smart enough to understand that I'm talking of the top n minus 1 pegs only. Sorry, not pegs, the disks only. So for top n minus 1, I am moving from A to C using B. Then for the solitary disk from which is basically residing at A, I'm moving it to B. I'm not using C. So this is the base condition again. And then finally, I am using, basically invoking this subproblem n minus 1 from C to B using A. So these are the 3 subproblems I'm solving to solve this problem. Which problem? This problem. So n ABC is basically equivalent to append. So append is is an operation which uses these 3 in this particular order. So first L1, then L2, and then L3 will solve the problem for n in general. So I guess this is easy enough for you to understand. Okay, so let's show you the code which is simple enough. So this is the main function. Source is A, destination is B, and temporary is, so using which you are going to do the swap is C. So for certain number of disks, you have to basically call this function, number of disks, source, destination, temp. Right, number of disks, source, destination, and temp. So see what is happening when this function is getting called. So this is a recursive problem. A recursive solution of the problem. For disk n equal to 1, we are basically moving one disk from source to destination. That is the solution for n equal to 1. Right. Otherwise, we are calling this one if the number of disks is basically greater than 1. you are calling this disk number of disk -1 source to temporary using destination. Then you are then this is basically the print operation. This is basically the base operation. Number of disks from source to destination, and then for the other part, number of disks from temp to destination using source. So this is the C program to solve this problem. It's not that interesting, but still I will run the problem and show you. So if the number of disks is 1, so the sequence is moving disk 1 from A to B, right? If I run it again, if the number of disks is 2, you see from A to C, disk 1 goes from A to C, disk 2 goes from A to B, and disk 1 goes from C to B. Right. And for n equal to 3, if you run this, this is also work. A to B and then A to C. So you can understand this. So this is simple enough. So the C code is not that important. The important thing is how you basically decompose the problem into 3 subproblems and how you basically recompose the problem to actually find the solution. So up to this point of time, so this was about recursion. I will do some more problems of recursion if time permits, but I have the intention really of solving, I mean, few more problems with you. This was the some some people actually created this website where, so now I can in brief tell you the story of this Tower of Brahma. So I mean, here goes a legend that when universe was created, some people are some saints in the heaven asked Lord Brahma. Brahma, as you may know, that is a creator of the universe. Asked him that how long is this universe going to last? Brahma did not give a solution, but he gave them 3 pegs or 3 towers, and gave them, I mean, 3 towers made of diamond, and he gave them 64 discs, which was, which were, resting in peg 1, or basically pin 1, and the problem is to move from pin 1 to pin 2 using pin 3, but here n is 64, and do you know how big 2 to the power of 64 minus 1 is? So 2 to the power 64 minus 1 is the number of steps. Basically it is a minimum number of steps required to move basically required to solve this problem, moving from peg 1 or basically pin 1 to pin 2 using pin 3. So the number of steps is 1.84 into 10 to the power of 19. So as is mentioned here, and if you take one move per second, so that is quite fast, right? One move per second, it will take about 5.85 into 10 to the power of 11 years. So that is believed to be the life of the universe we are in. So where do we stand now? So this is an animation which shows that suppose if we imagine that the Earth, the universe was created during the Big Bang, and at that point of time this calculation started. I mean, this problem of moving the disks started for 64 things. So it is going on. It is still going on, and it seems that we are no way close to the destruction of the universe. So it's in Islam, I think it's called Qayamat, something like that. It is also, I think, called Armageddon or something like that. So if it has started now, then suppose you are at the you are at the beginning of the universe. So I mean, this is the animation of what used to take place. So this is the optimal solution. Keep this in mind. So this is the minimal solution. And if you go towards the end, so you can also go towards the end. An hour ago, yesterday, year ago, temple of KB build, biblical creation, first human, first humanoid. Yeah, we have reached the end of time. So you see that the universe, okay, the universe is end of time. Okay, now yesterday, something like this. So it is, you can also go to the end of the universe, and you can see this. And it is believed that these 3 golden pins were placed at Kashi Vishwanath, and this goes on. So a funny story, but what do we learn from it? We learn what we take away from this is, even for n equal to 64, it is, I mean, it is an extremely complicated problem, and it is an extremely expensive problem in terms of time required, right? So when n is large, it doesn't make sense to attempt the problem right away, because it is of exponential time. The complexity of the problem is exponential, right? So it is proportional to 2 to the power of n minus 1, right? So there are several classes of problems, like there can be basically linear problems which can solve basically in linear time, but the most complicated problem, more complex problems, are the exponential time problem. So this is an example of an exponential time problem, and it is always a good idea it is always a good idea to okay, it seems we have reached the end of the universe. Okay, anyway, hopefully that will not happen in our lifetime, but anyway, yeah. And it is always customary to even if we are not able to solve the problem, we're able to represent the problem in a way in which the solution can at least be visualized. So this is an example where you can at least visualize the problem. So here is a visualization of the problem. Here you can break the problem into sub-problems and basically recompose. So this is a problem again which has captured the imagination of many people. Okay, it is trying to basically reboot the universe. Anyway, good luck to them. But it shows that how much, I mean, involved people can be in such problems also. So I found this page, I mean, extremely funny. So I thought about sharing it to you. So hope it was enjoyable to you also. So maybe without much more fuss, we can move on to another topic, which will be useful to you, to the best of my understanding, in your project, in your assignment. So we are talking about structures and unions. So I'm not really going to cover unions. I'm going to, I have only one slide for it. And so basically the structure is the one on which I am going to spend some time. So in the previous classes, I told you that in a function, I mean return. So when a function returns some value, it can return only one value, right? But that is true for for the basic data types like integer, float, and all these things. But when you basically you can create some user-defined data types by which you can basically return a lot, I mean more values. In fact, you can, I mean, return some values which will be useful to it, and basically that can be an encapsulation of a class of values which you want to return from the function, and also you want to pass to the function. So in order to implement that, C has a facility called structures. So yeah, so the structure of structure is like this. So struct, then there is a tag name, and there will be the data types. So I will give you an example. So you can name a data type of your own that can be student, and within that you can declare some basic data types, like you can put name, you can put roll number, and you can put semester. So this basically encapsulates all the information of a student. So you can think it like a class, with the exception that you can only define the data members. I mean, there can't be any functions or basically the methods as in C++ or in other object-oriented programming. I think this is this is the precursor to the classes and the objects of the object-oriented programming parlance. So this is like this, and by default the access is of the public type. So you can, I mean, directly access the members of a structure. So the purpose of structures, to give you a formal introduction. So the purpose of structure is to form a collection of data items of different data types under the same name. So you see that in arrays you could also have, I mean, different elements under the same name, but they had to be of the same data type. So here you can also, you can have under the same tag name, like in this case, I mean, student is the tag name for this particular structure. But you can have multiple data types in this. So inside this you can have arrays also. So inside this there can be also structures that you can also do. And this gives you the provision of having a logically connected variables which can be of different types under the same name. So you see that this solves the purpose of putting all the all the entities, I mean, basically related to to a student under this one structure. So you take the example of the library system, which I have asked you to develop. So you can do it for a book, right? You can do it for a particular user, where a particular user can have a name and the permissions and all these things. For the airlines, you can do it for a booking or a ticket, and you can have an array of such basically structure elements. What was the third example? What was the third problem? Yeah, the basically the e-commerce system, right? So you can have it for a product also, right? Like how can you declare structures? How can you declare elements of the structure? So for an object-oriented programming, the relationship between a class and its instance would have been class and object, right? So here in this case, so there is no specific name for the elements. but you can call it, I mean, structure type variables. Like you can declare a structure and then you can write, I mean, struct student, and then if you write, I mean, student one, then student one will be of this type. So I mean, student one will have a name with, I mean, student one will have a roll number, and student one will have a semester number. Similarly, you can do it like this: struct student, basically student one and student two. You can also do this to basically declare, I mean, student as a data, as basically a structure of this type. Yeah, these two are same, I think. So okay, I mean, you cannot, I mean, it is not necessary for you to give a name, basically a tag name, but that for that all the declaration has to be done here. So you cannot use, I mean, you cannot do the declaration at some other place. Like if I give you an example, okay, I will give you an example shortly. So this was about how you, I mean, declare the structure elements. This is about how you store value into the members of a structure. For example, if, I mean, basically student one is a structure, is basically a structure of the student type, then you can store name using this. I mean, strcpy you can do. You can store a name like this. You can store the roll number like this, and you can store the semester number like this. Semester number is an integer. That's why you can. Semester number is an integer. For integers, for floats, we can, or basically for characters, you can do this kind of assignment. And for the strings, we have to use basically strcpy. You can also do this. You can also do this kind of initialization. It is also possible to copy the structure element. So when you have already defined student one and you have done a declaration for this one, student three, then you can simply assign student one to student three. Then the values of the members of student one will be copied to the corresponding members of student three. Okay, so let's show you a program. Let's look at this code. So struct student, and this is a particular declaration: name, roll number, semester. Student one is of, I mean, struct student. Then I mean student. So this I have done outside main. Inside main you can do like this, like you write int variable name. Instead of that, you can write, I mean, struct student. So this is the type, I mean, specifier. Then you can write basically student two. Student three I have I mean, initialized using this. Student four also I have not initialized. For student one, I have used this mode of doing, I mean, basically assigning the values. Then I have copied this. I basically copied, I mean, student one to student four. Let me first run the code. So I have already stored the values for I mean, student three and student one. Then I am going to read the values for student two from the user. So I mean, student. So you keep this mind that you can access the members by dot. So student one dot name. So that is the name member of basically student one. Then I mean, student one dot roll number and student one dot semester number. Okay, so these two assignments I have already done. So I mean, student three and student one already, I mean, have values for the members. I've copied student one to student four, and I'm left with student two, right? So which I will take as input from the user. So let's put this as, say, let's put this name. Roll number is, say, 18MS123, and semester, say, 5. So student 1 I have already initialized, right? Student 1 I have initialized as Kripa 70172 and semester number 5. Arka I have now put student 2. So I'm printing student 2 here, student 2. And you see that I have yes, for basically student 3 I have done this initialization. So I mean it is getting printed like this. And for student 4 I have what I have done, I have assigned student 1 to, so I basically copied the elements of student 1 to student 4. So now it shows the values of student 1. And and also, so okay, let me show you once again. Okay. And I have printed this to 40s. So you can see 40s at the end, right? So what are these 40s? This is basically size of, I mean, student 1, student 2. So what is size of the space that is taken by this data type? So the space taken by student 1. Student 1 is a variable, right? So how much space does it take? How many bytes does it take? So you see that for character it is 25. For roll number it is 10. So char is 1 byte, right? So 25 plus 10, 35 plus it is taking 5, right? 40 and not 39. Okay, I need to check this. Why it is? For integer it should have taken. So somehow it is taking, I mean, one more. So this is a bit confusing part. So different values come up at different points of time for different compilers. So semester number should have been 4 bytes, right? Because it is an integer. So it should have been 39, but it's taking one more for some reason, which I don't know honestly. But yeah, someone asked me a question. Yes, so let me try to find answer to that. So your question was, if I change student 1, will student 4 be affected? Okay, let me change. I'm student 1 here. So okay, let me change student 1 semester number. Okay, let me do this. I hope it works. See that it is a copy, right? So I mean student 1 and student 4 are two different variables, and you are simply copying the value of student 1 to student 4. So student 4 and student 1, I mean student 4 and student 1 are two different entities in the memory. So changing one is not supposed to change the other. All right. So this is about how you can access the different elements of a structure. So let's see how you can pass structures into functions. So this is a structure. It's for book. So there's a title, there's an ID, and there is a book number. Okay. So this is a function which takes book. So here there is a copy of a particular basically book type. So here I have used something else, type def struct book. So book is an alias for struct book. So here, so basically struct book I mean looks a bit clumsy, right? So if you write type def struct, and if you write book here before the semicolon, then struct book is struct book now has an alias which is book. So book 1 is a data is a variable of this data type. So I have basically initialized it like this. Book 2 I have initialized it like this. So I have used the function display book 1. So a copy of book 1 naturally goes into this function. So here, if I do any changes, book 1 will not be changed. So suppose if I do this, what's going on? Okay, you're sending copies. So book 1, book 2, let's print book 1 again. Let's see what happens. So book 1, I've printed book 1 and I've changed the stock in the first call. I've changed the stock, basically book number. And I've called book 1 again. You see that it has remained unchanged. Stock is still 5. So I repeat that in a function, when you pass a variable, you are passing its values. So here this book 1 is a local variable of main, and here this B is a local variable of display. So there is simply passing of the values. No addresses are shared. Similarly here, you're passing the values. So these are two different variables sharing two different address locations. But if I really want to update a particular book, so let's not use these lines. If I want to update book 1, by update I mean I am increasing this basically the stock. So here this number is basically stock, number of books in stock. If I do this, so what I am doing, I am passing book 1 here. So I am getting a copy of book 1 here. I am updating in the local copy. So this book is of update, but I'm returning B again, which means that now book 1 has the updated copy of this B. So here it has the copy of book 1 and it has updated that copy and it has returned that copy. So here book 1 is getting replaced by this because I assigned the updated value here. So book 1 I am passing, I am getting back B, and book 1 equal to B means the updated value. So in B I have incremented, right? So that will be reflected in book 1. So if I display book 1, so initially what was book 1? Let's do this first. Initially book 1, in book 1 the number of stock was 5, right? Then I do update, and then if I display again book 1, I get it incremented to 6. After updation. After updation, I display book 1. So it is. So this is one way of doing it. You can actually, you can actually work with pointers, but I have not discussed pointers, which I plan to do after we meet again, just after the autumn break. But here is another way of doing it. You can update the local variables across functions. So this is a function, and this is main is one function, update is another function. You are passing a value and you are updating the value, and you are basically returning the updated value, and you are and in main you are basically replacing the local value with the past value. That you can also do. So I hope this will be useful for you.